And we are live. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming out to the Nooners of Ice and Fire live stream. Um, we have my guest today, and well, seems like these people are always around me. We have LMR, Living My Rhapsody, and MackenzieLBurns, or Sassy Sansa as we know her. Today is going to be the first installment of kind of a book club of the world of Ice and Fire, but also we're going to have offshoots. I'm going to have experts on to talk about certain things, historical, geophysics, astrological, things of that nature. But we'll just get right into it. Today, we're going to start with basically the first 5 or 6 pages, the preface, the Dawn Age, and the coming of the first men and the Pact. So, without further ado, would you like to introduce yourself? LMR, my co host.
I was waiting for the cue. Who talks? And actually, I have my sound on this time. Yay, go me. Um, Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me to this. Thank you for making me read stuff that is outside other stuff that I read. I enjoyed it. I loved it. And I did more research on stuff. So this is amazing. It's going to be so much fun. And listening to these later when you have um, more streams like this. So thank you for having me. And Kenzie, thank you for being here with us.
You're very welcome. And yes, this stream kind of forced me to go back into the histories of um, like the what history of Westeros, even though it's not 100% reliable, as nothing was really written down. Going back and finding different opinions was very interesting about this this topic, and we'll obviously know more as we move forward in history. So, yes.
Nice, nice. Thank you for coming out. I want to say thank you to everyone in the chat. We have Terry T, Bubba Husky, Reed Vengeance. Who else is in the chat? I can't scroll right now. You're going to have to help me with shout outs today, by the way.
Okay, so we have Baba, we have Terry, somebody called Living My Rhapsody. I have no clue. We have another Baba. No, wait, that's the same Baba. We have, like you said, Ree, Miss Cronin, Catherine. Hi. Oh, so many friends. Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm not. Oh, there we go. Hi. How, Brita? How are you? Nice to see you. Or read your comments. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to try to get on my phone now because I was trying to use my laptop, but it can't scroll quick enough. So let's start off here. What did you guys think of the preface and who this book is presented to? And how does that affect how you look at every word in this book?
I guess I'm going to go first. I don't see who's not muted. I guess I wasn't muted. Good.
I'll set it up a little bit for you. This book was written by Maester Yandel, and it was originally going to be written to Robert Baratheon. And this was written during the War of the Five Kings. And just, what are your thoughts on that?
For the preface, from what I read, it looked like it was not just written for, it was educational. It was talking about giving knowledge to others about everything. It was, it seemed that it wasn't meant to be one-sided because it talked about how stories are twisted, how whoever writes it makes it tailored to other people. So this is the first time I read it. I heard about it. I've heard about it before, but this was the first time I was reading it, and the way it talked about giving this knowledge to families and children, to spreading that knowledge, felt reassuring. However, this is again one person's opinion, writing it for a king, which makes it kind of odd too, because people lied before in the past.
Right. In this case, it ended up being for Tommen. What were your thoughts on it, Kenzie? I know you had some interesting thoughts.
Well, I was watching, like, I cheated a little bit, and I was watching a video where people were talking about this book and how it was written and who it was written for, and they talk about how it was originally supposed to be written for Robert, and then it was going to be given to Joffrey, and then we ended up finding that it was given to Tommen. And I believe, I can't remember who said it, because I watched a couple of videos, but they were saying that each, like, you can't really trust everything that's been written in the world of Ice and Fire, because it can be written in the context of per house. So like they can make whoever wrote it can make whichever house they represent sound better than another house. So like this person could have been representing, I guess, the Baratheon / Lannister line, where they write more about how later on in the book how this person did more things than they actually may have. And it talks, I guess, about how, like George has said in real life, that the histories are written by the winners and by the people that are going to read it. So they're going to obviously make Joffrey and Tommen believe that their ancestors did much greater things than they might have, depending on how or which part of the story that you're talking about. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that this part that we're going to be talking about today could very well be the truth. We don't know, as this part in history is not doesn't have as many parts to it as later history, but just keeping that in mind, that everybody kind of writes their own story for their house. And with the First Men and how Joffrey and Tommen are supposed to be kings of the First Men and the Andals, they're going to obviously make them sound so much greater than they might actually be. So.
Sorry, Franco has a few things to say. Yeah, to add to your point, on the first page we start to see that there are lies, and not lies, but mistruths or knowledge that they don't seem to have or don't believe. When we start to get into the children of the forest and the giants, and how Westeros was before the first men came. Do you have any more thoughts on that before we segue into the beginning of the Dawn Age or whatever?
Also, that actually just the thing about him wanting to, just a little bit about his history, how he came to be where he's at, why it was his passion, it was his lifelong passion. So maybe it's not that he owes allegiance to any particular house, because he actually was not coming from any house. Maybe I misunderstood, but then he just kind of appeared there, from what I remember. Johnny, maybe you can help me with that. Was he an orphan, or just he was given there by somebody that he knows?
I think he was an orphan, and an acolyte found him. I'm not sure. I think he might have been in a large, poor family. Either way, he got found by an acolyte. But yeah, it's very interesting. Up and comer, so he's trying to make a name for himself as well. So you have to look at it that way.
Yep.
So let's start with the Dawn Age, and basically, we find out that the Masters think the world's either 40,000 to 500,000 years old, which I would have to say at least 500,000 for it to even be possible for the planet to happen. For Planetos to exist, and it might even be older than that, in my opinion. As far as the timeline, we know during this time it was just the children and the giants, supposedly. Now, we do have some evidence of maybe a third race. We'll talk about that later. Let's talk about your thoughts, maybe historical parallels between the children in the forest and the giants. Kenzie?
So in terms of doing research about the children of the forest and the first men, there again is not much written about them in terms of, because not much history was written down, but we do know that there were two non-human races in Westeros at this time being the children of the forest and the giants, and that these children might have actually been adult-sized people just in childlike form, which is very interesting as you can kind of see, I guess, for the giants that they represent, well, a child represents like innocence and naivety, maybe. So maybe they thought they could control them that way. But in terms of historical references in our own society, like in our own history, there's many different conflicting thoughts on this. People think that the giants can represent what we know as like the cavemen or the Neanderthals because of how they're described in the books. In terms of children of the forest, they could be described maybe a little bit as the natives, but then there's other conflicting thoughts about this where people believe that the first men were actually more of the native slash I guess for the book reference, like a wild, like that they were the ones that were there first, and then that the Andals were more of the European settlers. But then there's other people who think it vice versa. Like it just depends on what you're looking at,
So,
and
I'm
what
sorry, I
you
didn't
believe.
mean.
No,
I'm
it's fine.
sorry. So the Andals and the children of the forest, in my opinion, represent two things. They represent hunter-gatherers as human beings, as well as indigenous peoples that are being oppressed by colonization. Now, what I mean by hunter-gatherers is men and women of the children of the forest were equal. They were on equal footing, and recent research has shown that equality was not an issue amongst other hunter-gatherer tribes, and the only reason equality became an issue is because of agriculture, the rise of agriculture. And we see that the first men do bring agriculture to Westeros. So I think there's definitely a parallel there. As far the children have so many ties to Native American culture, it's amazing in my opinion. You could go on and on about it, and I'll give some examples later. But as far as the giants, you could go as far as to state things like Gigantopithecus, other extinct species, or you can even say Bigfoot if you want. But they're a more primitive species whose tools they use are more just branches and rocks. So it's very interesting in that aspect. Sorry. Go ahead, Elamar.
Franco has an opinion. Maybe he wants to correct you, Johnny. Don't argue with your dog. He's dangerous. Little demon, but such a cute demon. So my opinion on that. Oh, so reading about it again, we talked about, or I think we talked about the children of the forest before. Like they are not just because they're small. Let's say people regular height when they see whoever's taller than they are, they will call them giants because they're taller. Whoever is smaller than they are, that resembles their offspring that is shorter, they may call that group of people children. But there's nothing innocent, I think. Obviously, we know there's nothing innocent about the children of the forest. So that name is deceiving. Giants were sort of or written as they were the ones starting the war. At least according to this text, they were the ones who started doing bad things to, and I'm just generalizing, saying bad things to children of the forest. And there were humans who were kind of like mediators between that. But I'm thinking whoever is in not as tall. I mean, I doing research, I thought of it brought back, let's say, leprechauns, and those are not, they're not nice. I don't think they're very nice. They're
Even
guarding stuff.
fairies.
Fairies
Like
too, they're very mischievous and just like they will trick you. They're tricksters, and they deceive you with them being tiny and cute, and you just want to like, oh, little cutie pie, then bam, it just eats you or kills you or well, kills you, eats you, the same thing, unless it. Let's not get into that, but oh, just horrible things. So nothing scarier than a tiny little creature that is supposed to be this good and innocent, and then it turns out that no, they're not innocent at all. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, they're just like us in my opinion. Maybe a little less. They're less destructive and more in touch with nature. That's their better side. But there's good and evil to them because they were warring with each other before. Not warring, but they had their squabbles with each other. They had squabbles with giants occasionally, but it wasn't much. They both kept the distance from one another and respected each other's boundaries for the most part. Giants are known to be lumbering beasts to take whatever they want, but it seems that they had an understanding because, and also, yeah, I think the children's green sight and warging / skin changing abilities uh, kept the giants at bay as well. Now, how deep that goes is highly speculated, but we know from Bran in the cave that there's some definite powers there. Whether it's enough to, it wasn't enough to hold off the Andals, but it seemed to be enough to hold off the First Men with the natural disaster that occurred. And I
Yeah.
just think they foresaw the natural disaster, and instead of actually causing it, but I could be wrong.
Mm. And I wanted to add to it a little bit about the children, just again, based on the way they look, based on how humans, I'm going to say people, whoever we're talking about right now, let's just say people in general, people slash humans, if they see a smaller, more fragile looking creature complain about this tall, hairy beast, and they say stories like one-sided stories about, and obviously communication was an issue too, but apparently they communicated since there was a pact and all that later on. But if that small creature comes up and says, "Oh, we're being oppressed by these big bad giants. They're doing this to us." So again, stories are written by victors, or stories are written by those who are in power, and maybe the giants were not as bad as they're um, described to be. Maybe there's more to that. Maybe it was both sided, but people maybe tend to side with a cuter, tinier, smaller, innocent looking creature.
Yeah, I would just like to add, since we're talking about children of the forest, we hear about warging and green sight. Um, we know it's prevalent in Native American culture, and a lot of them, not all, but you have skinwalkers. A person who can transform into any animal if they're wearing their pelt. Other cultures is they can also possess the animal. So there's so much Native American lore there, or even just indigenous tribes, and period. You also have the blood sacrifices, which we get into, and that reminds me a lot of the Mayans trying to appease their god so that the sun would rise every day. Now, we do have a limited understanding, and we think we understand what the Mayans were talking about, but they were also a very advanced civilization, well beyond their time. Uh, but the parallels are there with native cultures. Maybe.
I'm choosing to for Johnny to say who's going to talk. I hear Kenzie did not unmute, so should I go? I don't know.
Go ahead.
Okay. Um, so people who live closer to nature, they are, I guess, just because we can't see something or explain it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So for those who never experienced whatever some other person is claiming that they have, they cannot speak for like, no, you haven't, because whatever person says is according to their perception of what they feel, what they can do, and they have their right to say, okay, this is the way, this is the way it goes. This is the way. This is the ability I have, and the person who is listening to it, like they don't have no right to. Well, they have right to say that I don't believe it, but they cannot counter it.
Can I say something really
Go
quick
ahead.
that I just thought about?
Yeah.
And thank you, Ree, for helping me and remind. Mayans had the blood sacrifices, but they also cut out the hearts of the sacrificial victim, the heart tree. So just think on that. Thank you, Ree, by the way. And Eduardo, thank you. Nice to see you in the chat.
So again, blood sacrifices. In that world over there, magic or whatever we call it, things that are unexplainable, they do exist. So if there's sacrifice, I completely see how some people or some creatures may have those abilities, and especially if they're closer to nature, if their thoughts are not so mudded with anything like drowned by other things, they're so very close to, I guess I don't want to call them gods, but whatever forces are there, it can definitely be a reality for them. And this can be passed along. Not everybody gets it, because that would be just a race of, it would have been known more, I guess, if that there was this race of creatures who can do that, that all of them can do it. But kind of like a legend that it's not common, but it does happen. So that makes it more special. Kenzie?
Well, like to that point as well, like with being so connected to nature, the children of the forest, they didn't like fashion their clothes out of like really animal skins or anything. It was more like what they could find, which was like leaves and like all of these other things. Which, and then in terms of like the blood sacrifice, it's like what I guess now, or what feeds the heart trees and stuff, because at some points, well, we see it in the show, that when the heart trees are like crying or whatever, it's like tears of blood. So the heart trees like kind of need blood sacrifices to survive, kind of. So it's kind of like connecting all of these different historical pieces into, I guess, the prehistory of like this amazing um, book series and show, which it's very cool how they get to kind of like meld all of these ones together. But in terms of like not being able to judge people or judge the past, which I don't think they did very much, but because of the Andals and how they, not the Andals, the First Men, and how they invaded into like Westeros, it's very similar to how the Native Americans were separated into certain pockets of history, or pockets of like North America and like America and Canada, as what happened with our own history. And Johnny might be able to bring it up in a second, which is like a picture. I'll stop talking so Johnny can kind of take over that.
It didn't work. I popped it up
You may
there. It
have,
didn't work.
hold on. To talk while you play it.
Oh, okay, hold on. Yeah, I got this. Check out everything there. You can see where the first men came over the land bridge, and you see where the pockets of the children happen. Now, we know these pockets have a lot of weirwoods today. Some of them do, especially up in here. Any other points you got on that?
There is a comment. I don't know if you want to read it right now or maybe later.
Eduardo.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, the Mayans played. I'm not gonna try to pronounce that, Eduardo, but it was a type of almost like a type of soccer with a hoop. You could use your elbows and everything, and the winner was lucky enough to be sacrificed to the gods. And they played as long. Sometimes they played for 24 hours in some accounts until they got the ball in that hole. And it's probably one of the most challenging games I've ever seen. and the fact that the winner gets sacrificed, and I believe it's during a celestial event, if I'm not mistaken, um, when the Milky Way. I'm not sure, but I know I'm pretty sure it's not during a celestial event. Eduardo can correct me on that. But yeah, it's a very, very, very great point. Um, very great. Oh, go ahead, anyone. Or do you want me to segue to the next thing? Or
Yep.
yeah, in Pure Hexa makes a good point. The Vikings made blood sacrifices. They willingly sacrificed themselves to the gods as well. It was considered an honor to be chosen. I can't remember how many years apart those were, but I want to say 7 for some reason, but I could be wrong. Someone can correct me in the chat. So the next thing we'll talk about is the Sea Stone chair is mentioned on Old Wick. That is, the throne for the Greyjoys. And it's noted that there's possibly a third race that was in Westeros before anyone else ever came. A more technologically advanced race. No, yeah, but what do you think about the possible unknown race? And we know that there have been tales of dragons that roamed freely in ancient times as well. Could that have any connection with anyone else?
I'm very much for it. I mean, for all we see over there, we that was one of the things I was wondering because they talk about the children of the forest, how they what they did, how they were, where they lived, the giants, and then they talk about first men and how they just kind of overtook the area. But my question will be, okay, how did they all came to be? Like, where did they come from? There nowhere did I see. Maybe it's somewhere else later on, but nobody mentions the creation. And I'm not talking about religion or gods and all that, but I'm talking about even questioning how it all came to be. It's like it's the dawn, but what about the dawn of all? Like, that's never mentioned. It just is taken for not for granted, but it's a given. um so maybe I'm sure there was time before that time. um there's history before that, it's just completely unknown. Even what we're reading is completely not validated by anybody. It's just legends and stories. But yeah, I completely see how there could be a different race. There's a different continent and different things on that continent that speak of different civilizations, more advanced civilizations. So yeah, I would not exclude that at all. What about you, Kenzie?
Yeah, like I guess because the Children of the Forest didn't really have too like I guess like a solidified god, or like they didn't have like a name for it. They didn't understand like what they could call it, which is I guess maybe similar to how I guess probably in our own times that people believed in something but they didn't know what to call it, which then eventually turned into, at least for the Children of the Forest, um, and the first the first men, like the old gods and the new gods, which is kind of like interesting. I haven't done enough research to figure out what exactly um, what we would have called them in our own times, but for them to come up with, or for the children to use the weirwood trees as representations of what their god is like, might be similar. I might be putting on a bit of tinfoil here, but it might be similar to with the Native American tribes and how I guess the totem poles and like everything, like how they believe that they're like almost like a hierarchy in life, um, which
That's a
is
good point.
kind of interesting because they're both made out of wood and they both have faces of creatures and people. Like we don't, yeah. So it's it's kind of hard to kind of guess because we don't know too much about our own, or like the history here, but we also don't know too much about like how like certain religions and even our own world started and beliefs. So it's kind of like a toss up. Johnny?
Yeah, exactly. You know, Milt's throwing in the comments that make you think. Yeah, I think this little blue avatar, if anyone's wondering, I dropped the call. I dropped for a second and then it popped back in, and I think that's why we're stuck here. If you're wondering and that's annoying anyone, I apologize. I can't see it on this screen. I can only see it on the live screen, and there's nothing I can do about it. It's so crazy because everything we know about the Dawn Age comes from either old Valyrian text, old text from the Andals, old text from the Gascari, and Ashai. And then you have the runes of the first men, which we don't even know if they're actually translatable. As you know, I haven't seen a Rosetta Stone type thing in this series so far. So those are still unknown. So it's almost as if a lot of the Dawn Age is completely lost to us. And it definitely parallels our own history, which we have lost so much of, um, especially through catastrophes and war. And the winner usually burns the history of the other side and rewrites it. So history gets so conflated. And I love how this book approaches that. Uh, any guys' thoughts on, you know, let's see, any final thoughts on that before we kind of get into the first men? Really,
Just
really get into the first men coming.
yeah, just actually when you mentioned that history, that the winner erases whatever was done before. Um, I did not look it up right before the stream, but Science Channel and educating me, um, talked about a pharaoh, probably, who wrote over the writing on columns of the previous pharaoh. They wanted to completely erase that dude from history. Nothing, not even saying a bad word about that person, just completely as if that person never existed. That is actually that is scary. Like the whole thing about nobody will even remember you after this. We see or we hear about the bad people. I'm saying like really nicely PG or G, bad people of the history that we learn about them, that their names, like if somebody says boom, that name, like oh my gosh, and we see all these images. But that's a good thing in a way because we are learning from that. But to make it to just erase somebody like that, that complete knowledge is gone, that is really, really powerful. Just wanted to add that when you mentioned this.
Anything you want to add, Kenzie, before I segue?
Well, Milt has like the comment of how prehistoric legends are passed down verbally or through drawings. So a lot of what we knew at that point gets lost in communication or misinterpreted. Even in our own, even in, I guess, Game of Thrones, like the TV show, sorry, and in season 7, John's just interpreting what he knows about the White Walkers on the walls of the cave in Dragonstone. Like he's only interpreting what he, I guess, was taught by Maester Lewin, even if he was, because he may not have gotten the same level of education. So he may have heard this information through possibly Rob or through Maester Lewin about this topic, as they don't believe in these people. They thought that they happened 100,000 or like over 1,000 years ago. So we kind of have this evidence in the show as well that people are still interpreting signs and symbols, and like Sam's trying to figure it out himself. So we have the young people in the story figuring out, and not just the maesters who have went and spent years and years and years of their life trying to figure out what these things are and who they are and how they work. Because even the maesters that we interact with in the show don't even believe that the children of the forest are still alive. So it's very kind of interesting to see how all of this stuff may have been true, but the people that are in the show question it a little bit. So
Yeah, and they think the giants are gone as well, even though Master Aemon has sent them credible reports of giants beyond the wall, certain location. Can't think of it right now. There, yes, it's very conflated. Then I'm going to segue. You have the first men coming over, and it symbolizes, in my opinion, humanity going from hunter gatherer to an agricultural society, because they bring with them agriculture. They cut down the trees, they take what's theirs, and they also bring with them inequality. Um, yes, so I think them invading represents many things. They come with their bronze and steel, representing technology. But technology, as we know, is not always the best thing for a society, especially in terms of equality and in terms of sometimes in terms of quality of life. Technology can bring you down. I mean, we're so out of touch with nature at this point. Um, if I go outside, I catch on fire. So, yeah, and we have a comment from Eduardo, and I'm going to let LMR take it from there.
Thanks. I just found a new way of organizing this stuff. I feel so smart today. Streaming at noon during that time, I guess, makes my brain wake up a little bit more than at night. And this is my day off, so oh my gosh. So I did ask Eduardo to clarify a little bit about that game where they took the ball and put it through that hoop, and obviously the winners were sacrificed, not the losers were sacrificed. And I did ask something like, what did the ball represent? Or I think I asked the question saying, does the ball represent the sun? It being round, or is it just a convenience because it's round and it fits places, goes through the hoop? Then he says, the ball represented the moon being swallowed by the sun in a permanent succession of day and night, the base for life. That is so interesting. Is that the one you wanted me to do, or a different one, John? Because I posted that.
That is the one.
Okay.
Eduardo, yeah. You're in high demand now. I need you, my friend. I need you, sir. I mean, yes. That threw me off because it's so awesome. I remembered that, but I thought it represented the eclipse. So see, I'm wrong. I'm not, I'm not near as smart as I think I am. As far as, I don't know, do you have any thoughts on that, Kenzie? And then also thoughts on what the first men coming to Westeros represents as a whole historically, and how you saw all that.
in terms of that, that's very, I guess, like with Eduardo's comment about how, like, the representation of the moon and the sun, we kind of don't really know how, I guess, the what am I trying to say? How that, or what the children of the forest and like the prehistoric of Westeros really think about those kinds of things. Like, we know that they, I guess, know it happens every day and all of this stuff, but we don't know how, if they really put significance towards those elements in nature. But I guess we can talk about more of the first men and stuff, because you guys kind of all said what I kind of wanted to talk about anyways. So it's just, it again is stuff that we have yet to figure out / understand about them, is like their relation to those elements besides the ones that they've utilized already.
With that, I just wanted to add something now that Kenzie were speaking about it. In that prologue, it talks about towards the bottom of the page, I forgot who said it. I'm so bad with names. Like, who are you people? I think Kenzie and the other guy, something crazy. Anyway, so there's this maester, I'm assuming, talking about the debate over the how regular the seasons were, and it is debated that it's actually not. It is possible, it's feasible. They don't use the word feasible, but whatever they use is, and then they countered with however something something. So yeah, just speaking of the seasons over there and how they're explaining the whole planet and cycles and different lengths of days. And it seems weird because they are not just saying seasons only, but I think the length of day, as if the days, obviously each day is either shorter or longer depending how you look at it, but it's just the idea, the way they phrased it. It's not seasons or anyway. I wanted to bring it up. Did you guys wanted to add anything about that, since I think this is the only place in
Well,
that talk about it?
I need to talk to an astrophysicist, but maybe I don't know if the planet size is supposed to be the same size as Earth or bigger. Um, I would say it has to do something with the wobble of the axis of the planet and also maybe an exaggerated elliptical orbit. But see, I don't know what I'm talking about. That's just me taking a wild guess. So, yeah, I don't know if I can add that much to it. Milt, do you have anything, sir?
And if you can clarify, like wobble, we do have that wobble, whatever 26,
Right.
whatever number, whatever is thousands or whatever it is. There's the wobble, but I wonder our wobble is not as fast versus over there they may be going crazy fast
Yeah, it
doing some
might
other
just
stuff.
wobble a little more and
Yeah,
be a
I
little
don't
more
know.
exaggerated because that's how we get our seasons. I know that much.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm no expert in that. Oh, Milt said he
I
missed
missed
it. I'm
it.
not going to repeat that pseudoscience. So I think
No,
that's
it's
pseudoscience. Oh, okay, Milt, I was thinking that Planetos, I don't know how big it is, but it has possibly an exaggerated wobble and also an exaggerated elliptical orbit. But yeah, I'm probably wrong about that because I know nothing of astrophysics.
yeah, I would be wondering if the wobble was, and I don't know if I call it the right thing, wobbling. Like we do have ours that it changes. It's not yet.
Precession of the equinox, if that helps.
Mm, I don't know.
It's a
I don't know. I
precession.
don't mean like it plans going like this, going around the sun and turning. I'm talking about going this while going that.
Mm,
So I
yeah,
wonder if it if it spun or wobbled fast enough that and doing whatever it's doing, what effect would it have on the days and maybe the
yeah,
seasons too?
yeah. We're just looking like we don't know what we're talking about now, though. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, let's go.
Kenzie, you got anything to add? Valley Girl accent? Do it. Okay. Um, so as far as historical references for the first men, let's talk about them and whether you think they represent, do they represent a composite of different historical figures that have invaded indigenous lands? I feel like the first men are kind of like the Vikings in a sense that we have some historical evidence that seems the Vikings come over to the Americas before everyone else and lived in tribes. There have been burials found of Vikings, or at least Caucasian, 6 to 7 foot, sometimes 8 foot tall skeletons that are buried with native women, supposed to be their wives. Now, there haven't been many found, and I don't know if they're confirmed. So, but I still think it's interesting as far as that goes because they did war with the children, but they ended up coming to a settlement or an agreement. Uh, but you can also compare them with the Spanish as well. But I would give that credit more to the Andals because they seem to be more destructive. But I don't know. What do you think about that? Anyone?
You mean about the invasion?
Yeah, and historical ties and
Mm-hmm.
parallels.
Yeah. So George, known for history, um, he takes things that already happened and makes them original. People say there's nothing original anymore, but I'm saying yeah, there is. If you take whatever you have and you put your spin on it, that's an original spin. Speaking of spin of the earth. and I'm still commenting with Milton comments. So if those who are more powerful, those who are maybe trying to survive, they can or spread or grow, they will invade, and they will take over, and they will do anything possible to justify what they're doing, as they're just surviving, and they don't care that they're destroying other cultures or places. They're blinded by the need to survive or the need to grow. So that could have been, or that was also part of what happened there, pushing people away, pushing people. I'm saying people as in creatures, people like, or humanoid individuals, like children of the forest and giants, pushing them, making room for themselves. And apparently humans populated that place really quickly, rather quickly. That's what it is. Attack by numbers. Just not go 1, 3, or 5, but basically multiply like rabbits and take over whatever you can. Kenzie? That was a bad segue. Kenzie?
I guess sorry for if you can hear that drilling. I have no idea what it is. It's just been going on forever. But in terms of who I think could be the first men, there's like two. Some people think that it's the version of the European settlers, but then there's other schools of thought that think it's the Native Americans coming. Like, it just depends. I can see both sides. I can understand both, or the Vikings as well, like as Johnny mentioned. So it just depends on, I guess, which school of thought that you pick. I can kind of blend them all together, and it almost seems like it works. Um, but I think the most predominant one, besides it being Vikings, is maybe a version of the Vikings and the settlers, where they're like less technologically advanced as settlers, but they're not as advanced as, or I don't know what I'm like trying to say. It's like almost an amalgamation of the two of them, maybe. I don't know. It's a thought.
So I would like to compare the flooding of the Armageddon and the hammers of the water to like a historical event in Native American culture, and it's Tecumseh, the leader of the Shawnee people, who united the first Native American to unite. I don't know about all the tribes, but many tribes. There's it's interesting because his brother was known as the prophet. He was an alcoholic, and this was right before or around the War of 1812. Um, his brother prophesied that they should all unite together and they would defeat um, the English or the Americans, and they were trying to get their land back. And it's very interesting because Tecumseh predicted that he would cause an earthquake by the stamping of his feet, and it worked out timing wise to where uh, an earthquake happened. Actually, 3 happened exactly when he said it would, and it was felt all throughout the United States. From Detroit, the epicenter was, well, supposedly in Detroit, but it was felt all the way to New York and Virginia. I just think it's very interesting. And at the time, the soldiers attributed it to him because it made him a greater foe, and it looked better when they got beat in battle. And also at the time, Tecumseh embraced it as well to give more power to his people and to put fear into the enemy. So it was used on both sides and conflated to benefit each other. I don't know. I just like that comparison. I really think I fumbled it up. Anybody on the hammers?
I am looking for that button, Johnny. Don't rush me. Sorry, no. I was in a chat and looking for the button. Excuses. So we did some research on the not just research from the book, but also research from history, and not just history, but legends too. I actually don't have much to add to that because you explained it. I did not do research on what you did, so basically I was just having fun listening to it. But yeah, Kenzie, do you want to add anything to that, or do you have any research relating to what Johnny was saying?
Well, you can talk about like the great floods in history, I think could compare to
So,
it as well. The great
right.
floods in all of
Oh yeah.
history and mythos, you could compare that to it as well.
Okay.
Go ahead,
So,
Kenzie. I
oh,
think
go
she
ahead.
had something on it. Or go
Okay.
ahead. Either way. Sorry.
Kenzie, she's like, okay, so speaking of the floods, as I was frantically trying to find some good stuff because I felt pressure from my co-host. So I know I did find a couple things. And I was surprised. I was educating myself this morning. It's a very, very awesome thing to do. Educate yourself in the morning. Flood. I only thought that there was this flood that what I was taught as a kid, the ark was built, people were saved. Some, well, according to the stories, God gave, heads up, like, hey, dude, yeah, I like you, kind of, I don't want you to die. Pack whatever you can and build this boat, and you're gonna survive, right? There are more stories like that. So the flood, and the reason why I'm bringing this part up is because there were those who survived, and especially it's written in this material that we read for today, is that it was too late. It didn't matter that this thing flooded and so much was lost, because the idea of it was to destroy humans, I guess. People didn't work. Somebody gave them heads up, and well, I'm saying somebody gave them heads up, and maybe that's where George got it from, because there's more stuff about it. There is this um, from Hindu. I'm just reading my scribbles from this morning when I was laying half on the side writing in bed. Hindu, there was a warning of first men. They were warned, and they specifically say warning the first men of the flood to save them. And then there is the legend of or myth of Prometheus, who is known for the other things. And it was all brought back to me when I was reading it, that he warned people about, or warned humans about, the coming up flood, but also he was known for to like, he wanted to help humans. He wanted to he stole the fire, from what I understood, brought it to humans to make them, took the fire from gods and gave it to humans to help them out, to help them survive, to make their lives better. But then he was punished for it. But later on, he was actually saved by I don't know what to classify him. Hercules was a semi god or demigod, semi god. I don't know. Mother, and then father was God, I think. So there is this give and take, meaning somebody sacrifices something. Somebody doesn't want human race to die. They see some good in them and they want them to survive. But maybe either the chosen ones or those who are lucky enough to survive. But then everything else is erased. So they, in a way, they may have to start over. So when you erase stuff, all the good things are forgotten, like history. Of good deeds, but also the evil and squabbles and wars may end too. So it did that work because the humans survived, and then they were still warring later on. But maybe that's why things are happening now. Who knows? Another reset of kinds.
Yeah. Did you want to add anything, Kenzie? We got a couple of questions in the chat after you. I know you had something on that.
Not I can't even remember now. About what I was talking about, but yes, there are a few questions, and the one that I was like, oh, it didn't click with me, is Catherine, Miss Cronin's question about the fact that in the Dawn Age section it repeats the word fact a few times in a couple lines, and that fact is that the giants made no homes, but how do they? But is it the Jesus, is it that they did not build the wall? Uh, it's possible that they may not have had no homes, but they built something. I don't know what you people do you guys think? Like, it's possible that
I think they at the bare minimum lived in caves and made lean-tos. I mean, that wouldn't be beyond the realm of capabilities for giants, in my opinion. Now, as far as them helping to build the wall, you would almost need giants, now, depending on how long it took the wall to be created. Now, a lot of people think Brendan the Builder is a composite character. I'm one of those people that tend to believe that. But if you put magic into it, and it just depends how much magic you want to put into this. Like, Milt was talking about the hammers of the water, and it can't happen without magic, since the book makes it seem so catastrophic. So it really depends, in my opinion, on how much magic you want to put in there. But I do believe the giants are misrepresented because they say that the giants haven't been seen in, 5 centuries? And the bones that were sent to the Citadel were sent there by Brandon the Builder, who dug up the King of Giants' grave. Correct? I think I'm right on that. But yeah. Anybody?
Yeah. I have some research on giants, if I can plug that in over here, if that's okay. I don't see anybody nodding, but I'll go ahead with that, if that's okay. There are a couple legends that I found. One was from Romania, and actually no, that one was about giants. Um, the other one was about just a snow creature. But about the giants, it talks about um, that there was this ancient race of actually people. There were people. Um, they were from Romania, and um, they lived peacefully with humans. But then, after warring, after they went into war for whatever reason. There was this. It followed. The flood followed, meaning God created the flood to punish them. So there is a talk of giants, creatures, and then there's a talk of war or conflict, and as a punishment, flood coming over and taking away or erasing them from history in a way that whatever remained was not even history written, it was just legends. um, Humans survived, but those giants were completely wiped out, and then what remains after them is basically treasures, like wherever they were buried. And this is weird because it's like as if they were killed but then they were buried. Like, why would you bury your enemy? Why would you take your time to bury your enemy? And wherever they were buried, treasures were buried with them. So I'm thinking, why would you bury all these treasures anyway? Like, just kind of relating to what's going on here, maybe. War, and then you argue about something, but then something else happens and makes you kind of rethink your life, rethink your choices. And maybe, again, I'm relating it to what's going on now, currently, what is going to happen in the show and in later books. People fighting, but maybe at the end they're going to find common ground and decide, give each other some respect, and have that respect follow, where you bury those enemies because there's this greater, not evil, because nature is not evil, nature is just nature, um, just coming together in the face of loss and death, forgetting that you're warring with them. Kenzie, Johnny?
Yeah, I agree. In a sense, is you okay there, Kenzie? Your face seems frozen. Oh, that's your avatar. No, yeah, I don't have a lot to add. I kind of want to get to the breaking of the arm of Dorn. Shout out to Milt. He's hopefully still gonna do that special with me on that, and he's gonna show us all the geophysics. Hashtag magic did it all. Um, in a special stream, just kidding. But special shout out to Milt, and special shout out to the one true David Adams and Chrissy of Old Stones dropping the links. Thank you so much. I'm gonna give a shout out to everyone in the chat later, but let's kind of talk about whether you think the flooding of the waters was caused by the children, was either amplified by the children, or the children just saw it as far as green sight and then capitalized on it. Kind of like the point I was making with the Tecumseh thing. But according to Milt, it had to be some kind of magic involved. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
Um, I think that it's both. Magic is there. I cannot deny it. I call it magic over there because I can't explain it by science, even with what we know currently. Um, so things are happening there. I call it magic. But like I said before, children of the forest, they are closer to nature. So like, I don't want to call them animals, but they're closer to nature. I mean, more animalistic, not in a bad meaning of that word, but they can sense stuff. So if they maybe saw something coming, and like you said, they just added stuff, they used it to their advantage and may amplified whatever was going on with the use of magic, which I can't deny that it according to me it exists over there. To what degree, I don't know. Who can tap into it? I have no clue. Somebody somewhere, but obviously there's science. There are things. It's not just the planet is alive, and if it's alive, then things are going to be changing, and the changes usually have there's a warning, and the children, I'm sure, they're tuned into the nature in a way that it helps them to predict with certain, um, I guess, accuracy what's going to happen and when it may happen. Yep, Johnny, Kenzie.
Yeah, I just want to say, Bubba Husky, here's your shout out, you needy man, you. Uncle Bubba, shout out. All right, go on, Kenzie. I'm sorry.
I guess in terms of the children of the forest and the whole thing with the whole flooding thing, it's possible that they saw it. It's possible that they didn't. It's possible, and why I say this is that they could not all of them maybe don't have the green sight, so maybe like a handful of them saw it, and then they all just assumed, oh, we all saw it, and we all believed in it, and we all like, or the fact that they all caused it is a possibility as well. Like if they wanted to be a recluse group of, I guess, beings, um, that they saying that they caused it and that they were the ones that made it is possible. But I don't think they caused it themselves. It may have been something that naturally could have happened, but that's all I really have. It's like I didn't do enough on this specific topic to give a much more valid opinion, but it's like possible.
Well, that's okay. This is just an intro. We're just kind of getting started in this book. Um, wouldn't expect you to know everything, you know. But I want to say some magic was involved, but whose magic is the question. Was it the children's, or was it some other unknown force that we have yet to has really been revealed yet? I don't know. So you have this ancient third race, and then everything we know about the Dawn Age is very inconsistent, and it comes from across the narrow sea. All of the stuff comes from across the narrow sea. All the information about it. So it's hard to know what was really going on in Westeros at the time. If there was another, was were the others already around at that point? Is that why they had to make the pact? Is that why they stopped fighting? Because it seems like both sides were, like, the humans were supposedly winning, but if they were winning, why did they stop fighting? It makes no sense. It's not in human nature for the most part, especially when you got into the type of fighting to the extent they did and how paranoid they were about the trees watching them. So it makes me wonder what this existential threat was that made them have the pact, and whether what happened to the Arm of Dorn had anything to really do with the children or not, besides the fact that they either foresaw it through green sight. I don't know. I have some questions about it. I mean, the easy answer would be that it's just, the children through some magical ritual caused something to happen. I don't know what. Maybe Milk can tell us.
Jen, you want to ask those questions now or leave them for the next stream?
Oh, which questions? Oh, the ones I was talking about?
You mentioned you had some questions about it. So I'm just wondering. After reading this, I had some questions to it, like in general, maybe just hypothetical questions, some things that just kind of made me think about things, or I don't even have answers to them technically, but yeah.
Okay,
Silence.
so
Do you want to move to a different topic, or can I just mention something that I don't know how this one relates?
go ahead.
Okay.
The pack ended the Dawn Age anyway, so we'll kind of finish up and then take some questions from the chat. This was, we don't have really a set time limit. It's okay if it's short. This was just basically an introduction into many, many, many streams on this topic.
Yeah. I wanted to bring up another, I guess, a legend from Switzerland, something called Switzerland Spring Festival, when there is I don't want to call it creature, a being called Bog. It's spelled Boog or Bog, and then that it's kind of similar to Boogeyman that is tormenting children. So that's kind of an interesting thing to think about when we have the White Walkers taking sacrifices and then burning of that statue. They make, or they used to, I don't know if they still do it, but they make a statue to represent that being, and they sacrifice it by burning it, and that is a welcoming of the spring. So it may be relating, maybe not to current things like we're reading, but for future stuff, that you need to burn something that is made out of snow or that is representing snow in order to welcome spring and to overcome winter. Just something that I noticed while doing research on just a little bit of, there's just a little bit about others in this prologue, but, and that is interesting because we don't know much about them here, at least in this book. Any thoughts on that, or do you want to continue?
Yeah, we don't know much about the others at all. We know that there was one long night recorded in history, but we know that there wasn't much recorded in the Dawn Age. Everything was recorded afterwards. So, yeah, I mean, there could have possibly been more than one long night before these events are happening. We don't know the actual origin of the others because if you go by the show, they made the Night King, and what did the Night King do? Just go, because he wouldn't have had an army at that point. He's just gonna go steal a bunch of babies, and that's how he makes them. I don't know. The show did. I think it's gonna be far more complex, and I feel like they're more of their own society in the books. Maybe even that ancient society that used to be there when possibly it was colder in that region throughout Westeros all the way down to the south, and maybe they live there. I don't know. It's purely conjecture, so, and all speculation at this point. I just know that the pact is very important, and it makes you wonder, it's a pact of blood. So, and the green men are described just like the children of the forest. So, my question to you guys is, do you think the pact was sealed with a mating ritual or with like a marriage between the two species? Or do you think the blood pact was something different? Because I know we do have what seems to be offspring of the children, and that's where we think we get warging and all green sing from. At least that's what I think.
I think it was sealed by, I don't know if you want to call it marriage, but maybe some kind of, getting together, forming, and then this new blood sacrifice, maybe creating a new being that is flesh and blood. So, and that being or beings to continue. So like even over there in the current times of where the show is currently at, what you do to ensure that, well, ensure to a certain degree that there won't be any more fighting, you take somebody from one house or one, let's say, men or children of the forest, and then you combine them together and you create a new thing, something that both of you will have in common. So I completely see it as bonding like that. That would be considered blood sacrifice in a way, creating this new being, creating something together. So you don't have, so technically you shouldn't be fighting because you would be fighting against yourself. Kenzie?
Yeah, I think that potentially the children and the Andals and the children and the eventual and the first men were involved in some sort of pact that could have been like a marriage between these two factions, maybe I guess you could call it. Um, as well as we don't know the extent of how the children were able to have more of these, I guess, of themselves. Like we don't know like if it requires more like an additional blood sacrifice or something. So if we found out more about that, it'd be very interesting, as well as when everybody, especially in the show, um, claims where they came from. They say that they're from all of these other places, but from the children of the forest. So if they were to find out potentially, besides, I think it's actually the Krennic men are like the only ones that don't openly say that they are somewhat interconnected with the children of the forest. So for all of these other factions of houses to find out that they're actually involved with the children of the forest in some way would be very interesting. So, what? And that's pretty much all I have on that.
Yeah, that's a good point. We're gonna kind of, I don't want to say wrap it up. We got a few things we can talk about. I know in history, we know that pacts don't ever go well, especially for the indigenous people. That will be something we'll get into on the next installment of this series when the Andals invade. Uh, it's very. See, sometimes I almost wonder if they saw the flooding or they had this green site, did they know the Andals were coming? But see, this was thousands of years later. Uh, I don't know. The accounts in here are so messed up that it's hard for me to decipher what's real and what's not. And you have to take everything from Aesop and try to match it with stuff in here to get your facts right. Because we have the green men having horns, but I think they could possibly just be wearing hats made of antlers or not even be green. Because, they're the children are all different colors in the books, not just green. But they do wear leaves and twigs and stuff of that nature. I don't know where I'm going with this. Any final thoughts, and anybody have any questions? Sorry, LMR.
Why sorry? What did you do? What did you do, Johnny? He's apologizing for something. I need to find out. Just the thoughts. I think I mentioned some of them. So after reading what we read for today, I wondered that there is actually no explanation, and I did mention in the beginning of the stream that there is no explanation of where the people where any of them originated from. There's no mention. It's a given. So I don't like unexplained stuff. So I'm still bugged by the fact that nobody mentions where did all of them come from. And I'm not looking for, and they were created, and then boof, there they appeared. I want to know that they are even questioning that. That is, I think a lot of people do that. Like, where did we actually come from? And I don't see it from them. Next one is it only shows how they are migrating. It only shows how they're moving, but I don't know why they're moving. Why did they come from the east? And how is it that those people knew how to farm? like, what is there to farm? I thought maybe I need to look into it more, but I thought anything east, or majority of the whatever's in the east, I don't know, like what kind of stuff grows there. I thought that Westeros is a place where you could farm properly. That would actually make sense for you to farm over there. I don't know what's in the east that would make the farming so wonderful. Maybe that's why they moved, because something happened that it made them move completely. All of them, or not all of them, but so many of them moved. And then a question that I had in general was, where did they move from? Was it from the east only, or was it from southeast, from those other continents? And speaking of the other continents, the mention of the slimy rocks, like, what is that about? I still think that there was a different civilization, and it's just nobody knows about it, but there are signs everywhere. So just some stuff to think about.
The oily stone, as they say. What do you think there, Mackenzie?
The last kind of point that I wanted to bring up is that I guess the Arm of Dorne is kind of like with our own in our own history, I guess, with I guess, was it an ice bridge or something, like a landmass from, I forget which part of the world, into, I believe, North America, and then that gets severed and then taken away. So that was like the only like last thing was that is very interesting before it moves on to the next section. But yeah, it's very hard to kind of figure out with this section anyways, points in history that we can kind of connect to, because we don't know if what was written down is 100% the truth, or if, as Old Nan says, that these people were actually like made up by someone else's mind. Like, we'll get into this obviously later, but like the ice spiders, were they a real thing? Were they just small little creatures, or actually as big as hounds? We don't know 100%. So this is just the beginning of a lot of myths, or creatures that we don't understand and how they operate. Even though they still are today in the story, we don't know how they really came to be, which I find very interesting, because we don't know, and who knows if George even knows about these people 100% yet. So it's a toss up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Reed's talking about the Trail of Tears, and I was gonna bring that up this stream, but I think it's better to kind of start that off on the next stream, since we have the Andal invasion. You can equate the Trail of Tears a little bit, and with everything, but I think it's more fitting for the Andals at this point. But that was a horrible, horrible thing, and what a role model Andrew Jackson was. That's all I'll say. I just, I really love this book. If you don't have The World of Ice and Fire, which I'm sure everyone in here has read it, get it. It is fantastic. If you're just a show watcher and don't want to read 4,000 pages of Aesop, this book is for you. This will help you understand the show better, at least the backstories anyway, and what they're talking about. I would recommend it, definitely. I don't know. Do you have any shout outs, anything you want to say before we get out of here?
I usually leave the shout outs to my Westworld co-host because he does them so well. I cannot top that at all. Like, I just nothing. You do it so naturally, Johnny. Anyway, I just want to thank everybody for being here. This is Tuesday, even though it says Nooners. Well, depending where you are. Anyway, read my comment. I'm not gonna say it live. It's always a good time for a stream like that, with a funny title, or funny title like this. So we're just having fun to it, enjoying ourselves here. Thank you for giving us your time. I don't know where you are, what you're doing, but some people took their lunch with us. Some people just listen to us as they're doing other things. I love that we can just be here, friends, chatting, and I'm extra happy because this is my this is my Saturday. It's Tuesday, but my Saturday. So this was a great thing. I needed that. So Johnny, thank you so much for inviting me here. Kenzie, thank you for being with us too. It's always so much fun when we three of us get together. So again, thanks, and we'll probably see more of these, many, many more, and Johnny's going to have a great guest, so I'm looking forward to it. Kenzie?
Yes. Subscribe to LMR's channel. She's very humble. She has two of them, Living My Rhapsody, and the other one's Living Rhapsody. She's going to make an incognito stream on there one day. We'll get her on it. We'll have a few beverages and get on there.
Oh, that's a
Go
good
ahead,
way to
Kenzie.
do it. Yeah, I should do. Oh my God, Johnny, you gave me a great idea. That's called living reviews. I'm going to review different poisons, adult poisons now. Just kidding. We'll see. Who knows after a couple of those. Kenzie?
I just want to thank everybody for showing up today, to thank Johnny for hosting this stream and taking a chance at, or a shot at this massive book that everybody seems to enjoy. To thank LMR for taking time out of her busy schedule and her Saturday, I guess as she called it, to be here with us. And shout out to, I guess I can start the shout out to Milt for helping us with, I guess, our own historical scientific facts as well, among other people, which Johnny will obviously do because it's his channel and he's very good at the shout outs.
Well, I just want to thank both you ladies for coming on. We have so much fun, like you said. I appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and tell Bubba Husky. Here's you another shout out, Bubba. Thanks for posting all my stuff in Amino and taking my hearts and my likes. I would like to level up too, Bubba. Thank you. No, I'm just messing with you. I don't care if you post them. I don't have much time. I really appreciate it, man. Cindy, Sammy, thank you for coming in. BBM was here. Actually, we'll be streaming later. Legion Season 3 predictions. That'll be at 8 o'clock Central. Miss Cronin was in the chat. Go check out her channel. Everyone in here has a channel. Dog Sidious is in the chat. Thank you so much for coming out. Terry T, thank you so much. I don't know if we saw Nancy T today, but I'm going to give Nancy a shout out because my blanket's right here and I love it so much. Eduardo Blanco, thank you so much. You are awesome, my friend, and we will see you soon on the stream. Maybe a couple. Hint, hint. The one true David Adams, always dropping those links. Thank you so much. The Revengeance, she's going to be on tonight with us for the Season 3 predictions of Legion, which is awesome. Moni G, hey Moni, what's going on? And Septa Shayna's Secrets, stop by. Thank you so much. Check out that channel. Some very good Game of Thrones videos on that channel. Also, let's see, who else? Anybody? I'm missing people I know. Help me.
Boy Hexa or Brita.
MackenzieLBurns.
I don't know who she is. There's also a person named Johnny Be Crazy. I don't know.
Chrissy of Old Stones. Forgot Chrissy. Thank you so much, Chrissy, for coming out. And yeah, y'all can help me if I'm still trying to scroll. This chat blew up today. Anybody.
Dog Sidious.
Yeah, we got Dog. Oh, Dog's got a live stream later today, right, Dog? In a couple hours on Star Wars, right? Shout out to Dog. Check out his channel. He has a great channel.
I don't know if you mentioned Forrest.
Yes, Forrest Blurda. Forrest finally made it. She missed the last live stream. Was so sad about it, but made it today. And yes, thanks everyone. Who else?
Did you mention Don the Krakenwit?
Oh, no, Don the Cracking Wit. Go check out his channel. Thank you so much, Don, for cracking the wit and coming by and checking it out. I know we're missing people. Go ahead.
I'm pretty sure you mentioned Al. Yep.
Oh, Al the Red Sox. Al Red Sox fan. Go check out his channel. It's just so fun to listen to it. Shoot.
Catherine Cronin. I'm pretty sure you mentioned, but I'm just scrolling and seeing names. So yeah,
there's a lot there.
And Mill, thank you for all the answers that I was posting them for myself too, like your answers. I always love listening too, but reading your answers to my questions. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for coming out. Much love to everyone. Nothing but love and positivity. Spread it your way. We're just pushing it out of here. Push, push, push. Positive, positive, positive. We love you all, and we will see you next time. And I'll see you guys in a few hours. All right. Bye, everyone.